Okay, so this is the current set of gestures employed for EAO for November 2017. So who gestures? Whole group, rest of group, or groups, group 1, group 2, up to group 5. If we need a group 6, it's group 6. If we need a group 7, it's group 7. Point to point, changing the point-to-point mode, and then pointing, and so on. Acoustic versus electronic. Acoustic, electronic. Who, as in who wants it. And that's the set of who gestures. So, moving on. Go gestures. We have a hard-edged play. We have a hard-edged off. Enter slowly. Exit slowly. And I'll sometimes suggest the speed of enter-exit based on, well, facial expression as well as the speed at which I do it. So there's a connotation and a denotation, so to speak. Continue, or sometimes a single hand. So hits, remember hit, a single hit is a very articulated single point, like this. A Braxton hit is a stuttering, scattering hit, and that goes like this, like so, or like this, like so. Scans, preparation for scan, and then the basic scan is only play when someone passes over you, or possibly stopping on someone. Continuation scan, after I pass over you, continue playing. Inverse scan, or a mute scan, means when someone passes over you, when I pass over you, you're silent, and then when I stop passing over you, you start playing again. So those are the go gestures that I have written down, so presumably they're all the go gestures. So what I'm calling content gestures are, first of all, remember that pitch range is always within this box from here to here. And so there might be things happening at a specific pitch or at a range. So if I'm giving a range of pitch, I will give a range like so, like so, like so, and that's giving you a bound of pitch to work within. So long tones and height of long tone could be like so, or it could be long tone and then with a pitch range. Pointillism. And pointillism could be a pitch range, or it could just be the entire spectrum. Noise. Well, this is different than sound painting, notice. Noise, I do like this. And the opposite on the spectrum of pure tone is this. So it's like a tuning fork. Tone, noise, like that. And then rough versus smooth. Think of it as rubbing your hands over the surface of a sphere. So smooth is like this. Rough is like this. Not to be confused with exit slowly. It's the surface of the sphere. So you could have, for example, rough noise or a smooth noise as well, and so on. Silence, I tend to invoke as a reminder that people should be silent, but just this means silence itself. Contours, so moving smoothly through pitch space. It's like a changing situation, and whether we're in launch mode, which I'll talk about in a moment, or whether it could mean that I'm telling you a shape and then go, or it could mean you're continuously following it, depending on if we're in so-called launch mode or not, which I'll get to later. Ladders are the discrete equivalent of that. So it could be setting you within a pitch spectrum, or the pitch space, or it could be modifying what you're doing. Ladders. Improvise, and this is key to notice a very subtle difference. Improvise is this, with full hands like this, and that's different from develop. Develop, the idea is that you I've recognized you have some small fragment of an idea, and I'm asking you to develop it over a long period of time, a minute or something, that you're maintaining the idea but progressing it. And that's this. That's develop, that's improvise. Sort of the way to end improvisation is finish your idea. You're signing off on the idea. And it means you're going to find your own ending within the world that you're exploring at that time. Again, not a sound painting gesture, but this I usually invoke in the context of pointillism is to shorten or lengthen your grains. So each individual note or sound object, I'm asking you to shorten or lengthen. And that acts like a continuous fader of sorts. Or it can act if you're very responsive. Otherwise, it's just telling you where I think I'd like you to be. Yeah. And that's what I have down for content gestures. Yeah. So relational gestures, I break it up into relational gestures. So it's asking you yourself, or asking two groups to relate to one another. The first is relate to, so it's like this. So you might ask group 1 to relate to group 2, for example. And it could be relate to in some way, but the basic idea is that you are trying to enter into their sound world and do something that complements them or works with them. And there could be more instructions after that. So that's relate to. I would say that the opposite is contrast. You're contrasting what they're doing in some way. There could be constraint or not. Contrast. Synchronize. So this is the prep gesture for synchronize, and this is the enaction of synchronize. The idea is that you are trying to, the way we use it in EAO, is that you are converging to whatever the group that's identified, whether it's the whole group, whether it's group 1, you are all converging into a single pitch, a single timbre. You are moving together to, it's a kind of a tuning of sorts, a tuning meditation, if you will, that you're trying to match in as many dimensions as possible. Now I might suggest you can synchronize more. This is kind of the unsaid in a sense. Might ask you to synchronize and then stop when you get halfway there. So getting halfway to a synchronize is also interesting. Or I could ask you to synchronize, sometimes ask you to continue doing the synchronize while I do something else. So one that I have to say I got from Evan Mazunik's video, which I'll give credit for, that I believe it's his and perhaps another sound painter's idea that I like very much, is copy-paste. And so the idea, and it's not the grains, but it's the idea that you hold up and you point to someone in the ensemble and you've copied what they're doing and you're going to give it to someone else and paste. This person keeps doing it, this person is mimicking. And so it's a way to move an idea around the ensemble. Possibly they keep playing, paste, and then you might stop them, for example. So that's what I have for relational gestures for the time. Transitional gestures. On-off, the idea of on-off is that you're flipping a switch, everyone who is playing stops immediately, everyone who isn't playing starts playing. So I'll often sign whole group first to get your attention, or it could be within a group. And then this is the prep, and then I step forward, and then it's like a switch in Mario Brothers or something. It's down, and then the flip happens. And then up, it flips back. And we could go back and forth, or we could continue with the flip. Something similar structurally is break. So break relates to whoever's playing. So I'll often sign whole group to get people's attention. But the idea is this is the preparation gesture, and then you point to people, and whoever you point to should stay in. And then you step forward, and then when the break happens, everyone stops except the people who've been pointed to. Break. And then that could continue like so, or everyone else could come back in. And we could go back with that. So that's break. Morph is a kind of a smooth transition gesture. So this is morph. Sometimes I will give a duration fader for morph and a few others, but so this is time duration. Usually we agree upon this could be 3 minutes, this could be 1 minute, this could be 30 seconds. And so that's usually worked out with the group, what this mapping is. Otherwise, it's on your duration if no one is given. Morph means you're morphing from, so it only relates to if you're playing. I'll ask a person, a group, or the entire ensemble to morph to something else. Now, it could just be go after the morph, Or it could be like this, and I'm actually giving you a continuous fading of when the morph should happen too, and the idea being that you've completed the morph when it comes together like that. So that's morph. I talked about develop. Again, develop could be with a duration. Let's see, I'm reading my list here. Okay, so go onto or go back from. The gesture to go onto and the gesture to go back from would be, I tend to use it, something's happening, so I'll ask do something and then go on to and then sign something else. And then using this as the inaction. So we'll do the thing and then we go on to the other thing. You know what the other thing is because we've talked about it. Go back to really means we're going to do something for a moment and come back to what we're doing. It's very nice for doing quick, kind of percussive or quick pointillistic or something that's has a lot of dynamism and then going back to something. So that's go on to, go back from. And I think that's different than sound painting. Don't quote me on this, but I believe my use of it, to use it as a go gesture, is unique to EAO. So I just want to note that. Wait is just basically I assign some content to someone and then ask them to wait. Often, like for example, with an on-off, I'll ask people that are not playing, like let's say rest of group, some content, wait. And then I'll go to on-off so that you know that I've prepped you with some kind of content. So that's just the wait gesture. Basically, it's coming. What I've just talked about is coming soon. Yeah, so that's the transition gestures, as I call them. So other structural gestures, how I like to group it. Memory. So, well, actually, before mentioning memory, just there's a few word gestures, I would say, things that actually have a direct meaning in English language. So this is change. It could be so simple as to say change, group one, change, go, and then just change to something else. It's literally the word change, with is this. It's to make compound sentences. You could say long tones with noise, for example. And then the other one that I want to mention is this. So it's kind of like you're rubbing your hand over the surface of the sonic world, this thing that's happening right now. I mention that because quite a common thing with memory is I will say, for example, whole group, this thing, one. So when it's preceded by this, it means this now is going to be preserved in our memory for memory one. It's the same gesture to recall it. So it could be time has passed, things are happening, whole group, memory one, and then we bring it back in. So the key is that you see the this beforehand, and I don't step forward. So I'm committing here. When I say whole group and I prep, you know that it's a recall of memory one. And usually you'll remember that we've already committed a memory one as well. And two and three and so on. Not usually past five in my experience. So, okay, minimalism. This is the idea that you're creating a short repeated fragment of some sort. It's just a clear repetition that you're cycling through in some way. It could be that minimalism is just given without a tempo of any kind or any kind of pulse, or oftentimes it could be minimalism and then like so on a pulse. And you don't have to, every downbeat doesn't have to be a new sound, but this is the tempo grid or this is the pulse grid that you're working on. And a common thing to do might be to ask for it to change. Yeah, anyways, that's off, but you know, then you change on the pulse. And then it might ask you to continue that. So that's minimalism. Watching myself as I was doing that with the latency actually really kind of is tricky. Okay, so pitch up, pitch down, pitch up, and then when you enact it, you go up by some increment. It could be a semitone. It could be, oftentimes in EAO, I like to say, you choose whatever your increment is and stay consistent with it. And then we talk about it if it doesn't seem like maybe you could have a larger or smaller step. And then pitch down, like so. Now, I'll sometimes, and this I'll mention it now because it often relates to pitch up, pitch down. I might ask, for example, group one to pay attention to this side of the body, group two to pay attention to this side of the body. And so for pitched up and down, for example, you could have them going up and down, or up, down, up and down, up, and so on. So this is the gesture to pay attention to this or pay attention to this. And it remains active for while that sound painting is being enacted. That's pitch up and down. Okay, another one that's not from Soundpainting, but I've brought into the EAO context. It's kind of an electro-acoustic gesture in some sense, makes sense for the ensemble, is record on and off. So there'll be something happening or about to happen, and I'll do this. And the idea is record your mental, your memory of how your playing is going to be. For example, I could ask you to do a sequence of gestures, and then I stop and I throw it to you, and you're now looping. The idea, you're looping your memory of those gestures and your memory of how you're playing. Think of it as between those two. So it's a way to capture and loop within the ensemble. So for example, we could have, and then we're doing a scan line that just loops through like this. That's a nice one. That's actually very challenging to do that one, especially when you change speeds. So that's record on off. Stab freeze, classic one from Soundpainting. It's very nice. You address a certain group, you hold this up, and then preparatory like this, and then this is the freeze moment like that. And when you do that, people are playing or it's either a little granular repetition or it's a spectral freeze. That's stab freeze. And then when you off, back on, you could continue and keep it frozen. Yep. Palette, if we're working with a piece or working with a set material within a certain time, palette 1, palette 2, and so on. I'll put down here, palette 1, palette 2. That's if there's a pre-understanding of what that palette means, usually for a piece or a structured improvisation or something like that. Okay, so X hits and then. This is, okay, so hits again, percussive hits, braxton hits are the two types of hits that I mentioned. And so I could say one hit, and I hit up high, so it's not this, it's clearly this, and it's not enacting it. One hit, and then I might say, then go on to something, and then ba, or 3 Braxton hits, and then go back to this, and then we say 1, 2, 3, and then back to what we were doing. So that's the prep for that. Something that's very specific for EAO that's actually brought in this week is the idea that we're asking someone loop 1. So it's memory, but it's loop this go. It's working with pedal and guitar at the moment. So they're looping their own sound world. And they happen to have banks, so we could ask them to loop 2, bring it back, go. So they create their own memory bank, so to speak. Similarly with electronicists now, so this is recording the gesture world. A new one is recording, asking people, so we're setting up situations where someone's processing someone else, for example. So we have a flautist who's being processed and captured by another performer. I can ask the electronicist, who's doing granular stuff over here, prep them and record, and stop recording. Or we could just say, record for an amount of time and go, and they're recording them. In the moment processing, so we have like the tuning fork, so to speak, like the tone, and then it's like we're intersecting it with the other person. That's asking someone to process. So that's in the moment processing of another person. So I'm trying to see it so you can see it here, but it's like a hashtag sort of thing. The idea is you have a tone and another tone's coming in to intersect with it. So it's kind of resonance in a way. Fader gestures, obviously these will be very important as you see. They're usually enacted here. So volume with a V, lowest volume possible. And of course, if I think you can go quieter, I'll go here. Highest volume, if I really think you can go higher, I'll go up here. I know it's a bit of a wash on my skin, but so just this. Pitch, continuous modifications of pitch with an L. So L up and down, lower and higher. So instead of placing you somewhere, it's kind of adjusting. I'll tend to start where I think you are, and I'll move you accordingly. Same with volume. If I do this, it's because I think you're at this dynamic. And then tempo. Tempo, like so. Tend to use it when we establish something like minimalism, when there's a clear sense of tempo. Density. Some people call this, actually in Soundpainting they call this a space fader. I like to refer to it as density fader. We use it a lot with pointillism. So this is completely dense. This is completely sparse. When your arms are out here, this is like there should be 5 seconds between events. If it's a group playing a bunch of long tones, you can think of it more as space. You're allowing for more space in between within the group setting. But you continue playing the long tones. This one is I made for the EAO context. So we have this for noise, we have this for tone, right? So this is the noise tone fader. I don't want to create a hierarchy of noise and tone, so it's this way. And so this gesture, and then here's the fader. This is all noise. This is all tone. And so again, I'll start thinking you're somewhere and then move to somewhere else. Reverb fader, we've got a lot of people who like to wash reverb all the time. It's lovely, but sometimes we want to have a crisper, closer texture. So it's like tempo fader, but it's sideways. This is no reverb. This is all reverb. So in theory, this would be an infinite reverb. Usually it maps to the individual. So they might have a 20-second reverb time, decay time. That'll be their full reverb. So I try to work with the individual on that. Yep, so those are the faders. And there's only a few more. Continuous mapping gesture, I refer to it, Shapeline. So Shapeline is people are constructing their own mapping of my motion, and I'm listening for it, trying to find what's repeatable. So this is Shapeline. Once Shapeline's in, motion, all continuous motion is being mapped in any way. It could be quick, could be slow, and so on. That mode is active. Sometimes I'll ask people to Shapeline here or here. So one group could be here, one group could be here, and so on. This, which is the sound painting gesture for watch me in general, I use it to say watch me, meaning Shapeline's off and we're back to signing in the other way. So this kind of ends the Shapeline mode. So it's pointing, fingers pointing like that. So Shapeline is it's quite nice to use. So I mentioned launch mode before. So remember with sound painting that there's always some kind of an action of a gesture or a stopping of a gesture or a point situation. Launch mode is making it so that the signing of the content is grouped together with when it happens. So that's like this launch mode. And so, for example, if we did long tones, it means you play the long tone at that pitch, and then you stop. Play the long tone at that pitch, you stop. Pointillism, we could actually do more of a map with pointillism. You play it and stop, right? And so launch mode is on until you say launch mode, tear it up. When you tear it up, launch mode is off, you're back to the standard sound painting mode. So you can think of launch mode, point-to-point mode, standard go mode, and Shapeline mode as different ways where you might react at a different moment within the signing. And then finally, performer gestures. And let's say that for the rehearsal context, for the performance context, you should really feel out how often you want a performer to give a certain gesture. So we have 3 that we're using for the performer to deal with. One is, I don't know. I don't know what the sign means, but after you watch this video, you know what they mean. The other one is, I can't do that. I just literally can't. And it could be your electronic instrument can't do it, or it means that you physically can't sustain a tone for that long, etc. And you could miss something, especially, obviously people looking at a screen on a laptop. I've been there. I know it's hard to manage both of these. So if you can, ask please repeat. If you're playing, ask for a please repeat. So this is the motion, this is the gesture, to ask for a repeat. And that's what we have so far. Unless I've forgotten anything, or it's not on the Google Doc I'm reading off of, that is the full set of gestures that we're using in fall 2017.